Number 1. Insomnia. In medieval times, if you couldn't sleep, or if you wandered around at night, it wasn't insomnia. It was evidence you were being visited by spirits. People believed that nighttime was when demonic forces were strongest. So if you were awake during those hours, pacing, mumbling, or even just sitting up in bed staring into the dark, your neighbors assumed something evil was going on. Nighttime was supposed to be for prayer, sleep, and silence. Anything else was suspicious. Common cures included nighttime prayers, binding charms under the pillow, or even being forced to sleep in churchyards to scare the demon off. Today, we might call it anxiety, stress, or a sleep disorder. Back then, it just meant you had one foot in the real world and one in the supernatural, and people wanted to bring you back before it was too late. Number 2. Having seizures. In the Middle Ages, medical knowledge was, well, let's say, limited. If someone suddenly collapsed, started convulsing, or foamed at the mouth, it wasn't seen as a neurological issue. Conditions like epilepsy weren't understood at all. Instead, people believed the body was being hijacked by a demon or evil spirit. The idea that a healthy-looking person could suddenly lose control of their body was terrifying, and anything unexplained was immediately labeled supernatural. Reactions varied depending on the region, but a common cure was exorcism. That could mean anything from chanting prayers to physically restraining the person and trying to shout the demon out. In more extreme cases, they'd force-feed holy water or even drill holes in the skull, a practice called trepanation, to give the demon an exit. And if the seizures happened more than once, that person was often isolated, accused of witchcraft or worse, tied to a stake. Number 3. Unusual knowledge or intelligence. This one is pretty straightforward. If you were too smart, other peasants became very suspicious of you. This was especially true for women or children, or worse, a female child. If you could read Latin, quote scripture from memory, or knew anything about herbs, astronomy, or math, you were automatically suspicious. Knowledge was supposed to come from God through the church, and if it didn't, then people assumed it came from somewhere darker. In the case of children who spoke beyond their age, it was thought the devil was speaking through them. For women, being too educated often overlapped with accusations of witchcraft. People believed demons could transfer knowledge into human hosts as part of their deception, and if you were calm, clever, or unafraid during questioning, that only made you look more guilty. The cure? Well, depending on what crimes you were accused of, either death or being silent from now on. Number 4. Sensitivity to religious objects. One of the biggest tests for possession was how someone reacted to religious objects. If you flinched at the sight of a crucifix, refused to enter a church, or even just didn't seem enthusiastic about prayer, that was enough to raise suspicion. People believed demons were vanquished by sacred objects, so priests would hold crosses near people, splash them with holy water, or try to make them repeat prayers. Sometimes these were public displays. Whole communities would gather to watch someone being tested. And if you failed, the outcome was usually isolation, permanent banishment, or even death. In reality, some people just had trauma, illness, or didn't know the prayers. But that didn't matter in a time when your reaction to a supposedly holy candle could determine your fate. Number 5. Hearing voices in your head. If someone said they heard whispers, commands, or strange sounds no one else could hear, there was only one explanation. A demon was speaking to them or through them. This was especially alarming if the voices gave instructions, like telling someone to harm themselves, attack others, or blaspheme. People were terrified of the idea that the devil could communicate directly with humans, and hearing voices fit the bill perfectly. In extreme cases, the accused were beaten or starved under the assumption that suffering would push the demon out. There was no distinction between mental health and spiritual corruption. If your brain was struggling, your soul was in danger of going to hell. Number 6. Being left-handed. The Latin word for left is sinister, which is where we get the word sinister. The right hand was used for blessings, for making the sign of the cross, and in most social rituals. The left was reserved for unclean tasks, both literally and symbolically. Also, in medieval iconography, devils were often drawn using their left hands, and witches were believed to cast spells or sign diabolical contracts with their left hand as well. Children who showed a natural preference for using their left hand could be subjected to forced retraining, and if they resisted, it wasn't rare for parents or clergy to suspect that the child was under demonic influence. Number 7. Sudden physical strength. If a small woman shoved 3 men away during a fit, or a wounded man managed to run due to adrenaline, that was seen as the devil giving them strength. The stronger you were, the more it confirmed that something inside you wasn't human. The usual fix was to beat the person in an attempt to try and weaken the demon. The logic was that if they could tire the body, the demon would leave. No one stopped to think maybe people just panic in bad situations. Number 8. Talking to yourself. In an age before phones and earbuds, talking to yourself out loud, especially in public, was considered deeply suspicious. People believed it meant you were actually having a conversation with a demon. Whispering was especially dangerous. To others, it looked like you were speaking to some creature in the spirit world. The response was swift. In smaller villages, you'd be brought before the local priest, questioned about your behavior, and possibly subjected to an exorcism. Even if you swore you were just thinking out loud, that wasn't good enough. Some were locked away, others exiled. A few were even branded as witches, all for doing something as simple as having an inner dialogue out loud. Number 9. Having birthmarks. Birthmarks, moles, or any unusual mark on the skin were collectively referred to as devil's marks. According to medieval demonology, a devil's mark was a physical brand left by Satan or one of his demons, often at the moment a pact was made. Midwives, clergy, and inquisitors were trained to search the body thoroughly during interrogations. Often, this included stripping the accused completely and probing or pricking any suspicious mark with needles. The belief was that a devil's mark would be insensitive to pain and would not bleed when pierced. Once the mark was confirmed, further questioning or torture usually followed. That's right, a birthmark you were born with could literally get you killed for being in cahoots with the devil. Number 10. Speaking in tongues. Back in medieval Europe, if you suddenly started speaking gibberish or simply a foreign language, you weren't intelligent or gifted, you were possessed. People believed demons could speak through human hosts in foreign tongues, especially languages associated with pagan lands or ancient scripts. In some cases, the local clergy would claim to understand the demonic speech and use that to prove the person's guilt or connection to dark forces. No one bothered to ask if the person had just hit their head, came from another land, or was mentally ill. It was easier to call you a demon and execute you after all. Thanks for watching. See the video on your screen? Well, YouTube thinks this one might interest you as well, so go ahead and check it out if you like.